This is Olivia Green interviewing Mr. Andre DeVond Sr. for the HBCU Radio Preservation Project. It is currently 2:26 p.m. on August 12th, 2025, and this interview is being recorded at WCSU in Wilberforce, Ohio. Thank you, Mr. DeVond, for being with us today and for making some time.
Thank you for having me.
And before I get into the questions, can you just state your full name for the record and tell us about your relationship to WCSU?
Okay. Andre DeVond, I'm now senior. My affiliation with the radio station, I started here back in 1985, really, but I was doing more filming then. And in 1986, when the staff was released, I walked in and my classmates asked me to come in and oversee the television side, but to see somewhat the whole operations of the radio station. That's before Turk, and we found out that before we found out we had Dr. Dansker. So big shout out to Dr. Dansker and Turk, because it was the three of us that made a team at first to make things happen around here. So at that time, I really had never done any radio. I just had my classes the year before, and Turk came in, and I've always had a lot of respect and admired Turk, because Turk was a legend in Dayton, Ohio, on WDAO. And when I was a kid growing up in Cincinnati, I listened to the Turk Logan show on WDAO. So when I first met him that October of 1986, I said, I know your name. And then that's when I'm Turk Logan, former host and DJ at WDAO. And I said, oh, man, it's a pleasure to work with you. So we worked together, and Turk took me under his wing. And we became, he taught me a lot. So I was the second man around here at the radio station. I learned a lot. I was here for 6-7 years. And I was the operations manager, station manager, director at one time also. And I headed up the operations, but I was also on the TV side here. So that was my baby there, and I was the person that kind of saw the instructional services like the AV on campus. So that's how I got tied into all of this here at the radio station.
Thank you so much for kind of that overview and context. I'll have kind of more specific questions about that moment and your relationship with Turk Logan. We actually got to interview him yesterday, and I got to sit in. Would love to hear more about that. But before we get there, I want to kind of go back to your very beginnings.
Okay.
Can you tell me when and where you were born?
I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I came here in 1983 from Withrow High School. I didn't know my principal at that time was an alum from here, but I didn't know anything about college, and I was, average student in school. I knew I wanted to go to college, and in 1981, when I saw the Central State Marching Band play, because I played in the high school marching band, in 1981, they performed at Cincinnati Withrow at a game. And I turned around to my best friend, who was a year older than me in the band, and I said, Kevin, I'm going to go to Central State and play in that band.
What about that band hooked you like that?
Central State Band, I've always had ear for music. And I asked later, Mr. Davis, Danny Davis, that was the band director, I said, how many folks marched in that band? He said, I had 135. And the band just looked so massive on the field, a great sound. And when I heard that sound, and I was a trumpet player, but they did one of my favorite songs by Cameo, "Freaky Dancing." They did the Red Fox da 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 theme, and they did "Grapevine" by Roger Troutman, who I used to travel and work for at one time. They did that song, and they did that on the sideline. And I was just telling the band director last week, I said, "Al, do you have that song?" Dr. Al Level. I said, "Do you have that in your repertoire?" And he said, "Well, I did. I just wrote the song a couple years ago." I said, "Man, y'all need to play this, again." But I heard that band and the sound of that band, and I got hypnotized. And I almost got accepted to FAMU. I almost went to FAMU. I had just come from Florida that spring for a school trip. And I said, "It's hot down here. I'm going to stay home, close to home." And Mr. Davis sent me scholarship money. I didn't pay not 1 cent to go to school. And he sent me scholarship money, and that's where I ended up. So I ended up here, and it's been a love that and anybody that knows me and anybody you talk to say, Andre is a legend around here, and he loves his alma mater. And I feel that I'm the governor here. I can say anything I want to say about my alma mater because I don't let anybody, if we're a group, we have issues, we'll talk about it. But I don't let anybody on the outside come in and destroy my alma mater. And I've been in television news and everything. Yeah. So
it's a protectiveness
I'm very protective of my alma mater. It had put my wife through here. I have done everything here. Consulted, taught various classes in the communication education department. I have worked with the football team even. I was their videographer for totaling almost 9. Well, it's not that long because they went away. But I was probably one of their longest for about 10 years of shooting football. So it's the communications department, it's the band, communications, and football team. Those 3 things are my babies around here. Mm. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. But I want to get a sense of what makes you who you are and how your interest in music began. Can you tell me a little bit about like the community and the people that raised you and what they were like?
I think I had an old soul. So growing up with my parents who loved music, I remember I used to imitate James Brown and B.B. King and Stevie Wonder when I was a kid. And I had this little guitar and my dad and a harmonica. So on Fridays, Saturday nights, I used to entertain my grandmother, mother, and my father. And my father had this big laugh, and I would just clown for them. And he said, "I'm going to buy you a guitar." So he bought me, I still have all my guitars. Can't play them, but I still have them. Mm-hmm. And so he bought me an acoustic guitar. He bought me an electric guitar. This thing is probably a classic electric guitar that he bought from the guy down the street for $22 back in 1977. This thing is in the same condition that it was in then. And so I went to junior high, started playing trumpet. And that's what led me my years in the marching band, concert bands, and all of those things. I even had my own band, funk band in high school.
Did it have a name?
Back during that time, around 81, the Gap Band was, coming around. Right. And so it's when they put out Burn Rubber. And we actually performed that song. I sang the lead on that song. So that's like my theme song, And so we, my band that my buddy Paul and we put together, he was a guitar player. We did for our first talent show, Heartbreak Hotel, and the song, I think it was SOS. We're sending out a SOS, And so I was the band leader, so you see me directing the band, playing the horn and all that stuff. And then the last song we did was Burn Rubber, and I sang that song because we had a female singer too. So that was my first break, but a couple years after that, I did another talent show, one of the biggest talent shows at Withrow High School that set a trend after that for a couple years. It was about 3,000 people in the place, and I was the MC. And when I walked out on the stage, I couldn't believe all the people, but I didn't have stage fright. I started my band, and we did a song called It's Your Night by Ray Parker Jr. It's a real funk classic. And I did that song, and my buddies, who are now a group called the Mystics out of Cincinnati, they've been together for over 40-something years, 45, close to 50 years. They were sitting in the front about 5-6 rows back, and I kind of made eye contact with them, and they was pumping me up and everything. And when the show was over, they said, "Andre, you are a real entertainer." So I probably was the first. I'm the original Dr. Dre or Master Dre, And so
I mean, it sounds like you were doing that from when you were in the living room with your family.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. And I should have went into entertainment. So that was one of my loves. And so when those things began to happen, I came here, and let's go back. I always had a love for that and music all through elementary school. My professor or my music teacher in elementary school, Miss Stewart, I think her name was Carla Stewart, and God rest her soul, because her and the lady across the hall, Miss Tillison, who went to Central State, Edith Tillison, she was very Afrocentric. She was very soulful. And Miss Stewart, when she learned that I could play the recorder, that year, that fall, we had these recorders, and she gave me the biggest one. And she called me the king of the recorders. So we played Silent Night for the Christmas program. And then I can't remember what we did in the 5th grade, but the 6th grade, I started playing xylophones. And there's another name for them. But I played that, and we played Silent Night again, and she gave me the biggest one. How that happened, and you're going to crack up, I took this guitar to school on that Monday. So I was a safety patrol guard, and I told my buddy Ralph, who was standing across the street, I said, "Ralph, did you see that TV show last night with Chicago on it?" And they had a song called "If You Leave Me Now, You Take Away the Biggest Part of Me." And so the guy, the lead singer, was playing a 12-string acoustic guitar. Mm-hmm. I said, I know I could play this. And so I said, "Ralph, when we go into class, I'm going to break out my guitar, tell Miss Stewart, and I'm going to call you up." And Ralph kind of had his teeth like this. He's like, And so I said, "I'm going to call you up after I finish my first song." So get in class. Miss Stewart says, "We have a real treat here today. Andre is going to play his guitar." So everybody know I'm either comedy or I'm serious. I don't know what I was this day. I break out the guitar, and I strung one note and said, "Bling," all out of tune. "You ain't nothing but a hound dog." And I was rocking that leg and everything. That class was on the floor. And it was like, I was like, had this energy in me, and I was standing there. She stopped the class from laughing and everything. She said, "Hold on, class, hold on." And I kind of looked back at her, and she was like, laughing a little bit too. And so I said, "Okay, we got the class calmed down." And I said, okay, my next song, Ralph, do you remember the song I said I was going to sing? Come on up, Ralph. Ralph said, I ain't got nothing to do with this. And
Ralph.
so that was the end of that. But the teacher said, Andre, I know you could do this thing. I'm going to have another part for you for the Christmas show. And that's when she put me on the xylophones or something, and we did that. So I've always had a love for music, and my family have always had a love for music also, too.
So tell me a little bit about them. Do you have siblings? What are your parents
I had
like?
my family, after I realized my family originated from the South, Alabama. My father was from Alabama. My grandmother was from Athens, Georgia. They came to Cincinnati when she was 3 years old. And so I have a whole bunch of Jones folks in this area that I didn't find out that I had these Jones folks in the area till about 2010. I knew we stayed in contact with the one cousin because that was my mom's second cousin, my grandmother's first cousin. We kind of stayed in touch with them, but I happened to find their daughter at a AME conference that we used to have here called Tawawa. And when she went on stage to talk about her book, I had one of my sons working with me because I was filming and doing sound for the piece, the conference. And I said, go up and ask that young lady, is she would have been Attaway, Jones Attaway, and her name was Young. And she said, yes. And I said, and asked about the father, mother and father. And that was my cousin. And we've been like this ever since. So I've been now to that side of the Jones family reunions. And so the Joneses came from Athens, Georgia, by the way of Savannah, Georgia, and then worked their way and migrated to Ohio, and then dropped off some in Kentucky, Ohio, and in Cincinnati and Dayton. So it's a bunch of us now and throughout the whole United States and still down in Georgia. So my mother was born in Cincinnati. My father was born in Alabama. And my grandfather, my grandmother's husband, he was born in New Orleans. So I got all of that in me and everything. And the thing about the Joneses were Indians, especially Grandma Jones. She was a Blackfoot Indian. And so we're still trying to find the history and, locate her, her information on her and the rest of the family, because there's some of her family in Cincinnati. So that's that side. So I had two sisters and one brother. The brother, my baby sister, I'm the baby. The baby sister had passed and my brother has passed. So my sister, the oldest sister, we're the only two. So I'm the patriarch and she's the matriarch of the whole family now. And so we're trying to keep family together, but my mother was basically a housewife and very sweet woman, no conflicts, but don't make Stella mad because you hear that whatever that it sounded. She talked with her hands, and I thought she was Italian, the way she talked, but she had that sweet voice and just don't make her mad. And she was my backbone, and my father was a good man too, good man. So,
what are some of the kind of community institutions that you were involved in as a young person? I know you talked about being involved with the band at high school and doing your music, but were you all part of the church or other things going on?
I grew up as a Catholic. I left that religion when I came to college. Just, because I went to a black Catholic church in Cincinnati. It was, a little soulful. The priest, the father, he looked like a Jesus, with black hair and with the mustache, white guy. And he was, sorry about that. He, very cool. I remember him as a baby. He used to come by the house and hold me and pick me up and everything. I was about 3 or 4 years old. And so I was part of that. I was part of various things like in elementary school as I went to I was the Boys Week representative. I was 2 years captain of the Guards, and I even played baseball. I was a baseball freak growing up. Just didn't have the confidence to go out and really play for a team. And I did. I played for a couple of neighborhood teams. But I was into my music. I did things at the Y. I did trying to go to junior high. Junior high, I was kind of laid back. But in high school, very explosive of doing things with the band. I was somewhat political. In my senior year, we had a high school fraternity. I was president of the band vice president for 2 years, president for 1 year, my senior year, because, you have to wait till that's passed down to you. But I did a lot for the band. And so I was instrumental in a lot of things, those different pieces there. President of my fraternity in high school. I'm an alpha now. I did graduate chapter.
Okay.
I tell everybody, I had 2 weeks to go undergrad, president of my line. I told the brothers, I'm going to hurt somebody, and I left line. And but we all got an understanding now, because my line brothers hated me, probably still do, but no, they hated me for a minute. But it was just letting them down, letting them down. And I was a freshman. And there was other things I wanted. After I sat there and I saw things, I said, you know what? This can wait. This can wait. And it's one of those constant memories in my mind almost every other day. So when the brother came to me and said, look, you technically, you are a brother. You need to finish up. And that's what I did. And, brothers give me mad respect now. And I worked, when I left here, I went into television news back in 1993. Stayed in television news for a year after I got shot at. And I just had my second son. And I was shot at. My truck was hit. I went home and sat at my father-in-law's house, and I said, you got some of that moonshine, that white lightning? He said, yeah. I said, I need a glass right now. And he said, Andre, I don't know if you need to be in that job. The next week I had a new job as the director of media at Wilberforce, and I stayed there for 7-8 years.
I'm sorry. What happened? Did you fight? Was it just a random act, or?
Okay. Because we got the time to talk. You go, okay, cool. Earlier that day at 12 o'clock, I'm watching the 12 o'clock news. And my reporter, reported there was a fire on Lois Sue and Audubon in Dayton, Ohio. These are rough areas, okay? And as we were, they reported on it at 12 o'clock, and they called this place Taj Mahal. It was an abandoned apartment building. So in that, people, it was like New Jack City. That's where folks went and smoked their crack. So right across the street was this entering street. I think that was Loisu. And so 12 o'clock, they reported on it. 5:36, they reported on it. I was at a industrial site earlier that afternoon doing a live shot there. And my live shot was on that Thursday, a man went up in a basket to do this work on the electrical lines. The feet that kind of holds the truck in place from it tilting over gave way. He went into the lines. When I got there, you could still smell his flesh. So it was just an eerie feeling. So truck unit 2, I was driving, had bad hydraulics on the mask. And the mask is the thing that has the microwave dish on it that we send the signal back to the station. So as everybody's gone, my reporter left, I'm out there by myself. It's just an eerie feeling. Didn't feel right about this Thursday going in. So I had to climb up on the truck and push the mask down. And I have to tell that story because if I don't, then I'm leaving out later on that evening. So I go to lunch. I come back to the station. My reporter said, hey, Dre, you going out with me so we can do a live shot for 11 o'clock p.m. I said, hey, where we going, Sean? Oh, we're going to Loisu and Audubon. I went dark. I said, what? I didn't want to be over there on a Sunday in broad daylight. And I think that was the night that he almost got jumped by some guys in the neighborhood and was, you got that mother on the street. And she told the books, they were surrounding him because he had the camera on. And the mother said, the big mama on the street, leave him alone. He's here to do a job. I heard this on the camera. So when we're traveling there and we're on Route 35 headed in that direction, I said, where are we going? He said, Loisu and Audubon. I said, are you crazy? And I said, you lucky you got a $40,000 camera. You're a white boy with a suit and tie on. They was going to beat your behind, man. So we get there. So as I'm going in, down in the nest, because it's in a pit. As I'm going there, I turned around on that side street, that's Loisu, and I turned around, and this car, Oldsmobile's flashing at the corner, flashing his lights. I said, oh, craps, what in the heck is this? And I get out the vehicle, and the guy says, what are you looking for? I said, I'm good. I found what I'm looking for, antennas up. And I said, I'm good, brother. I'm good. So I go turn the generator on, cut the generator on, start lifting the mask, go behind the truck. So now we got the generator going. So the generator is like a sound like that, constant sound. And I heard something. But I said, Next thing I knew, my reporter was in the car trying to roll up the windows on the driver's side. Like, they shooting at us. They shooting at us. I said, what are you talking about? They shooting at us. Now I'm hearing, paka, 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 paka. I said, leave those dang on. I said, leave this dang on something alone, and let me throw this stuff. So I just threw the tripod, the lights, and the reel in the truck, reached around, shut the back doors, and got us out of there. So when I pulled off, because the mask was going up, and I said, oh, God, the mask. So I flipped that sucker back down, and it came down. If it would have went higher than 7 feet, I would have had problems. We would have had problems. When I was laying on the floor of the truck, my life flashed before me. I saw my second son being born. I saw some other things. So when people say your life flashed before you when you think you're going to die, that is very true. I was not imagining that. And so I got everything in, getting ready to pull off, and the truck stalls. But right away, I said, oh, I didn't put the pin in because there's a safety pin on the mask that's right outside the door. And that prevents folks from riding down the street, leaving the mask up, which has happened. And so I put that pin in and got us the heck out of there. And so I didn't think we were hit till I got back to the truck, and the security guard came in and said, hey, is everything all right? And I said, yeah, thank God we wasn't hit. Oh, you didn't see the side of the truck? And it was like a quarter-sized dent in the truck, back where I was in the truck. And the only thing that stopped that was it hit one of the racks on the inside and stopped the bullet from penetrating into the truck. One of us could have been killed that night. So the next day, the news director called me later on that afternoon after my live shot. And he said, Andre, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. I'm kind of rattled a little bit because I was ready to go and find these suckers. And he says, I told him, he said, you okay? I said, yeah. I said, I'm used to hearing gunshots, but not at me. I said, I'm here to report the news and not become part of the news. So I thank you for this opportunity. And first train smoking, I'm out of here because I have a wife and kids. And I'm very sure the Cox sisters do not want my name on the side of y'all's paychecks. The next week I had a new job. That was in May 22nd, 23rd. And I had a new job the next week, but couldn't start at September 1 at Wilberforce. The day before I came to Wilberforce, news follows me. The day before I started at Wilberforce, a young lady was shot and killed by her boyfriend. She was from Detroit. He didn't want her to leave, and he came down and shot her on the campus.
These were students?
The boyfriend wasn't. She was.
A student.
Yeah. And I didn't report the story, but I was instrumental in getting a lot of the details and everything of it and still assisting the station with it. So even after that, because I'm hardcore news, they still wanted me around, and I shot sports for another 6 months for them. And so that was much respect. And they loved the fact that I came from this university here. My news director said this. He said, Andre, I don't know who taught you, but if there's more students at Central State like you, I want them. And what he didn't know was I had my first year classes and everything else was on me. And then I start teaching students what I knew. Mm. And I went out in the industry and worked with professionals in the business. And I've been doing it for 40 years now. 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. It's
Yeah.
making me think a lot about my colleague and I were at NABJ
Yeah, this weekend.
earlier this weekend.
Yeah.
Up in Cleveland. And
I should have been there, but
yeah, there were all these sessions talking about, obviously, people in news, journalists, producers, video, all of us are thinking about the way that we're going into communities, especially Black communities. We're thinking about the ways that we're reporting on violence and those kinds of things that happen. But, like, when do we think about how that's affecting us as people? When you're dealing with that, you're carrying that with you. You're putting yourself in harm's way, maybe for the greater good of informing people. But, like, when do you got to turn in and be like, oh, I got people. I have a life. I have to think about my own longevity and sustainability. And it's just this very interesting, like, tension that's interesting to hear you talk about like this. Yeah.
The thing is that when you're out there and you're in it, that adrenaline is setting in. And I found myself adrenaline shots, I would call it, of many things I've done here at the university, that university across the street, the work that I do now in my own business. And my body a couple years ago said, shut down. And so those adrenaline rushes that you get when you're doing all of this, and, I didn't even mention my career in now working in the concert business and doing road work with certain groups and things, as I mentioned, traveling with Roger Trotman for a little while. You have adrenaline rush to being out there. And so, but my best friend I ever had in the world, Giovanni Anderson, he was a student here. We were born on the same day. He was born in Cincinnati too. Mothers, fathers, similar upbringings and everything. My best friend, he died in 2020, and I lost my brother. But him and a guy named Greg Wheeler, and I have to mention these names, so if these names are ever, this program goes out, because those are the guys that helped and made me. And in return, I taught them, because I took them up under my wing. And Giovanni and sometimes Greg, we would go all over the United States and follow the Bengals or go to a Reds game. And we went to the Super Bowl. So being at the Super Bowl that year, we had a good weekend. That Thursday when we got there, we didn't have to worry about nothing because one of his ex-girlfriends, we stayed at her place. She went to a skiing trip, and we had the place, and she left us a thing of spaghetti. We ate that for the whole week. And I got in touch with my buddies. We went to our first NBA game down in Atlanta. I called a guy named J.J. Yates who worked here, who was instrumental and taught me sound and audio. Stefan, who you're going to interview later, we all started out in Robeson. And J.J., I was working with him for almost 2 years before I came over here. And so we brought that nucleus together, and that's why when we all three were together, we were the original bad boys. That's what I described us. If we had a good teacher, we would have been unstoppable. JJ went to be with Kool and the Gang. He did sound. So while he's at the Super Bowl, while we're in Atlanta, he's there with Kool and the Gang. He calls us up. I called him up. And he came and we met up with him that Friday night. We went out to a couple clubs. Saturday, he said, okay, we're having the Super Bowl bash. And we met up with him. Kool and the Gang was performing. and my hair was much longer. My hair went down to my shoulders. I was a rock star, but I had a leather suit on that night. So this is at the Super Bowl bash. So people thought I was with the group. So Joe Namath come in. You know who Joe Namath? Yeah, you should. Yeah, you've been in New York. He comes in, and we just start talking. We talk for a half hour. So then here comes Here comes JJ, and here comes Giovanni. And I said to him before anybody came around, I said, hey, man, we know somebody in common. And he said, who? I said, Billy Joe, Coach Billy Joe. His eyes rolled up in the back of his head, Joe Namath now, and just went back like, oh, man, Billy, oh, my God, I just talked to him a couple days ago, and he is he was a great man. I said, yeah, I worked for him for 6 years. I was his film coach. And he said, he just started talking. I have a picture right now of all of us in the picture with Joe. And Giovanni was so excited. He said, man, all the things we've been through, Dre, and have done is because of our experience here at Central State. Here at Central State. Everything that I've done, I took my guys out to do, started out right here. And so it's been a nucleus, and that's been a thing where I'm working on some things now here at the university, things I cannot discuss because I'm trying to work on a name for this building here. I'm trying to get another wing onto this building here. But those things, I put it out there, but nobody knows where it's coming from. I'm just trying it. Don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm putting it out there. And the only thing these folks can say is no.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah. I want to talk more about, Central State and WCSU and its function as, a lab for so many students that have come out of it. But first, I want to understand a little bit more about who you were when you got here. You mentioned that you were a little bit political as a young person. What were the issues that you were thinking about as a senior in high school, a freshman, before you got to Central State?
I was a very serious-minded high school kid because I had a lot on me. I felt like Othello. And these were good friends, but I just felt like I had a group that was just trying to take down my leadership because I had a lot of folks, especially like the principal and people such as just teachers, administrators, believed in Andre. And anything they needed done, they called Andre to rally up the classmates and the students. And so I was that. When I did that talent show, the band director called me around about 6:30 in the morning, and the band was scheduling a trip to go to Florida. And he said, Andre, do you want to go to Florida? I said, well, Mr. Johnson went to school here too. So my mentors went to Central State, Jerome Johnson. Graduated in 1969, I think, 68, 69. But, he said, do you want to go on the trip? I said, Mr. Johnson, I don't have the money. My family is doing terrible because my father just, left and everything, got sick and everything. I said, things are not good for me right now. He said, do you want to go? And I said, yeah. You're going. You raised so much money that it was enough to buy uniforms and enough to take X amount of people on this trip to Florida that needs to go and should be going. And so that was one of my things where I'm doing this for entertainment, but I'm the band president too. And the way I set that whole structure up to sell tickets and make phone calls to the other high schools, I knew I had in me something that I can take away and use it later on. And I still stand by that to this day. But that's what I was doing. Now, when you come to college, as they used to say, you don't have enough hours to sit on the toilet. Sit down, freshman. And that's the way college is. You have to earn your rank and your respect around here. And that's what I did. And when I did that, I became a very popular person here on the campus. I get classmates who call me out of the clear blue sky, who still wanting me to do things because I emceed all the shows here. Because my band fraternity, Kappa Kappa Psi, shout out to them. I did all the shows and we raised all the money. So I said, hey, I'm going to throw this show. Brothers, this is what it is. It's a gong show. It's a lip sync show. It's a whatever show. And we did a show. I did a show for sickle cell and raised money for sickle cell. And I called my brothers, and they was right there. Band guys was right there. And so that's what it was all about. And I was into that. And that was one of the things because the administration here back in 1985, 86 saw that, this guy is not a bad guy. And I was more responsible then than I am now. At 60 years old, I was more responsible at 22 years old than I was, as now. Because now I'm tired. I'm almost tired, but I still got a lot of energy in me. But that was me back then. And I don't accept no for an answer. Anything in this business can be done. And that's what I said to the president of Wilberforce. And he said, Andre, you're making a lot of changes around here. And I said, I refuse for some folks at the end of the road. And these folks were younger than me than I am now. And I'm still going. Tired, but I'm still going. I said, I refuse to let these folks say no, and they're at the end of their road. Every other college are doing these things, and we have to be told no. Same thing around here. I do not accept no. So that's where the spoiledness come out of me, But I back it up. So hope that answers your...
It does, but I want to ask you, what did your time as a student here, your ability to build relationships, to create systems and sustainability, what did that teach you about yourself as a person? Because you already came in confident, already an entertainer, but what are you learning about yourself as you're at Central State? I
was a strong person, strong-headed person, and it's not about being cocky. It's not about being Mr. Know-It-All. It's about you that might be around me may be lazy. And my band director, I love that guy, Danny Davis. He passed on too. And he just passed about 2 or 3 years ago. And I think he had the most pride that I've ever seen in a person at this university in all the years. He used to spell pride, P-R-I-D-A-M-E, because everything in it had a damn in it. When we would be on the marching band field, he'd say, y'all better shut damn up, and that stuck with me, but it also stuck with a bunch of my classmates who we all went into teaching and, dealing with young folks. I'm in my TV class, and I say, stand by. Stand by in the studio. All right, y'all better shut damn up. They laugh, but then they knew I meant business. And with me, you got one time to get a shot. We have one time to get that shot in life, especially being black. we'll make mistakes along the way. I made many mistakes. We'll make it along the way, but as long as you don't do those mistakes 2 and 3 times. And with me, I've always felt that I got one time to get this and to make it count. And that's been my motto, to do those things. When working with the students, I teach that pride in them. I try to teach them that pride at both these universities, that pride into our universities here. You're the best that we have to offer. And that's what was instilled in me. Because my band director wanted me to be SGA president here. He said, Andre, I think you should run for SGA. I said, no, Mr. Davis, people don't understand my sense of humor. Because I have this sense of humor where I'm like cocky because I know we can do this, or down to business, but I can crack a joke in the middle of a funeral, and I have done it. Every funeral I've done, from my mother, grandmother, everybody's funeral, I have cracked a joke, because they used to call me Eddie Murphy when I was in school too, and I looked like him, with the hair and everything, and they said I will always crack a joke, because life is serious, but life is funny. We go through things in life that some days you just have to laugh about. All this political stuff, I'm very political now at this time, but I'm not going to get in this here because your funding will really be cut. I'm very political, because really the political side of me started back in elementary school.
Tell me about that.
I was, I think the first thing was I was the guard captain in the 4th grade.
Right.
So I just had a knack I had a lot of people like me here, but I had a bunch of them folks over here. And them folks are aliens that just don't like certain people that walk this earth, because they know that they carry something in life with them, and they walk around with something in them. I'm one of those folks. And so I was never out to, and I still get this to this day, I'm not out to beat anyone. I'm not out to swindle, hurt. And I had this one guy, he was a lieutenant, I was just a private. Didn't like he might as well have been a bulldog. And I could have been a fox terrier or something, And he wanted to pick on me all the time. So he picked on me for whatever reason, trying to be a bully, and he got us suspended. So when he got us suspended, I was like a cop. You see these TV shows and the cop, give me your gun and badge, and they're down and everything, And so I felt like a cop because I had a buddy and we called ourselves Starsky and Hutch back in school. And so when we got our belts taken away, I had the highest points because I was on my post all the time. I was serious about what I did. And so when I got back, I had so many points. I got my belt back. I don't know if he got his belt back. He was upperclassman. He was a year ahead of me. But he lost his belt. I moved up to a lieutenant, his spot. So that boy couldn't stand me from there. And it was February 14, 1975. And I'm sitting at the back of the room, and everything I say to you ties into today. I'm sitting in the back of the room, we're watching a movie, and I'm working the projector, okay? So So this guy Landrum, who was a lieutenant under me, he says, or a private, he was next in line to be a lieutenant. And he said, Andre, come here. And I said, what's going on? He said, Kenny got caught coming into the school late, man. And the guard supervisor, Mr. Costrom, took his belt from him. He's suspended indefinitely. I said, what? I said, who's captain now? He said, you are. I said, what? And I said, well, I'm captain, you're going to be my lieutenant, man, you know. So all that was a political thing. You know, it was very political. And so then the next year, Miss Tillison became the guard supervisor over the guards. And she said, sixth graders, only folks can be guards. That whole year I moped because I was going into the fifth grade. And I said, Miss Tillison, come on now, you know who I had the highest points last year. I was the captain. It's only best for me to let me go into that again. She said, nope, sixth graders. So when I went into sixth grade, the guys voted me as captain, and I remained captain that whole year. And still the highest points. No one got hurt on my guard, watch. The only person that was hurt was me because Ralph wouldn't come up and help me sing that song when we discussed it on the guard post that morning, That's so.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, but no, I had that was my thing, and then I ended up winning the Boys Week representative in the sixth grade. I went to City Hall. That's where I first met Jerry Springer. Oh, cool. In the sixth grade. He gave me his autograph, and I talked to him, and he asked me, "What do you like to do?" And all those type of things, and watched the city council how they worked that day, and that was me. That was me.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like this is giving a really full picture of the young man that now enters in to Central State. You said you started in 1983. 83. So what did WCSU look like at that point? Were you engaged as a student? Were students listening to the station? No. Okay. No. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, one, this building didn't exist. So this building came along in 89. We started tearing out of this building here, moving stuff in other places. And this was the elementary school. I don't know if Turk mentioned that. I don't know if that's mentioned, but this was the elementary school from the 1950s. So the neighborhood kids went here, and I still run into those folks to this day. I think my wife even went here. She did. She went here the first couple years because it went up to the sixth grade. So the children from the neighborhood went here. So sometime after the 1960s, this was converted into the radio station and the classrooms for the communications field, and where the cafeteria was, that was turned into the television studio. The group that was here played classical music. I remember a class named Johnny, I think it was Johnny Smith. He was on the air here back when we were in classes in 85. And he was my neighbor in Lane Hall. And he said, I got to go do my radio show. And I tuned in one night, and it was a do 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 do, and it was classical. But the folks who ran this station, like Mr. Turner, forgive me, I can't tell you Turner's first name, and Mr. Parker. Willis Parker, and Turner's name is going to come up.
I think it's LaRue Turner.
LaRue
Sounds
Turner.
right.
LaRue
Yeah.
Turner. Geniuses. When I went into the old studio, because now it's me. Before Stefan came over here, it's me tinkering. And LaRue was an engineer by trade, okay? That was he was an engineer. And I saw transistors made out of old metal pill bottles that they made that and then put a little hole in the top of it and sent the wires up out of it. And that was spitting bubble gum, as a guy taught me that term. He was named Eric. He used to be here. Taught me that term. He said, well, we just have to put it together with spitting bubble gum. And that's what we did before we got this building here. So when Dr. Thomas, Art Thomas, became president in 1986, that end of that summer, he had let go 69 employees on the campus. Part of that 69 was the staff from the radio station here. And Dr. Thomas had a very radical feel about himself. So he didn't mind saying, I'm going to say this, y'all can beep it out. You know, he didn't mind saying, I don't want to hear that shit. Get that, off the air. And I have to express it like that because that's, like I said, y'all can beep that out if you tell that side. But he didn't want to hear it. So he had met Turk along the way, and he had told Turk, I'm going to bring you in one day to run my radio station. So that was Turk's main focus, to run this radio station. And so I was here. I didn't know nothing about radio, like I said. And Turk, me being a young 21, 22-year-old guy that was hungry, I was right up under his wing, and Turk put me out there. Turk had me doing everything. And this is where I met the funk groups of the 70s through Turk Logan. Turk Logan was, like I said, the radio man in Dayton, Ohio. And he...
The soul of Dayton?
The soul of Dayton, right. And, my God, I'm sitting here or wherever, I'm talking to the Ohio players. I'm talking with Johnny Wilder, a heat wave. And there's another story of that because we ended up as the best of friends.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When he died, I cried like a baby. I mean, that was Mother's Day weekend 2006, and that was a tragic year for me because I had a couple of mentors that died that I worked in the business with, and my grandmother died that year, and it was just crazy. But I'm meeting all these folks, and I'm like, I can't believe this. So the station, Turk came in, and it became an urban jazz station. Now, we liked the jazz, but I was his thorn in the side, too, at the same time. And by that, I was the one that said, because Turk was so gung-ho about things that I was the balance with some of the students, with him, and I was like, Turk, we don't have to do that, man. I know you know what you got going on, but we're the only station in town. if we throw some R&B music in this format here, we will take over this place. So back around 1987, we start throwing more urban music into the program. And then I was on the air. I did a lot of drive time shows in the afternoon. And so me being a comedian and clown, people love my show. Turk used to call back in the studio and say, Andre, I need you to calm it down a little bit. I'm like, Turk, I'm not going to be a robot in the studio here, man. You know, people love me. And one time I lost my voice, and this guy named Daniel drove up here and brought me some cough drops. And I was like, Miss Glover, that was the secretary, she called me and said, Andre, Daniel was here and he, got something for you. And I said, I gave him shout outs on the radio and everything. And I was a celebrity in town. I would go to the clubs in Dayton because I loved dancing back then. Go to the clubs, people buying me drinks and all that stuff, and women dancing with you, and walk in the club. Hey, there's Reggie and Andre, because Reggie is free. I cannot go on with this interview, and not talk about Reggie Esprit. Reggie Esprit grew up here in Xenia, and he came back home from Washington, D.C. So he was like a DJ, but he took a gnat of liking radio. So he was on the air. The brother sounded great. Now, I was good. Reggie was great. And Reggie fell on some hard times. I'll just leave it at that. And that ended his radio career. But Reggie and I shook up the town. And everybody knew us. Like I said, we would go over to, at the time, the Silver Fox, and there was a club in Dayton, and my boy Lloyd, and we would all go over there and dance every Friday and Saturday nights, and we have a good time. And that's when Kid and Play came out with that dance, and they connect the feet. We did that and everything. And people would be cracking up because we'd be out on the dance floor doing this stuff. And a lot of mass respect that I received from the Dayton community, from this community here, the campus, and it was just great. And so when Turk finally changed the format, the station did this. It soared. And when he left, they went back to jazz. I'm okay on jazz, but jazz has to be programmed right. And I feel with a college campus of young black minds, the radio station should be, number one, a voice for them. Number two, music is rough. Music was starting to take its place after 1987 with, the hardcore rap, and I understood that. And Turk was a stickler about lyrics, and I respected him for that. Because even back then, you're listening to a nice piece of music, and all of a sudden you're hearing the N-word, the B-word, the MF word, and all that stuff in the music. I'm saying, no, there's no need for it. It's as good. It's a good piece of music. Substitute it for something else. So we got through that period, and our station, the year that I left here, the next year, the group, I tell folks, y'all won with Pete Rose's team. I was Pete Rose after they let him go from the Cincinnati Reds. The next year, after he recruited everybody, Lou Piniella took them to the World Series. And I took my group to the World Series. They won Black College Radio Station of the Year, I think in 1994. I left here in 93. And I helped those students still because they came over to Wilberforce, and I did a piece for them. And because when I left here, was nobody to do my job. So it was like they needed 3 to 4 people to do my job here. Still, no one can touch me in my job here at this university and what I did. And with everything I got going on, I can still do that job. And I can run rings around people because no one's going to take that experience. And that's the reason why they keep calling me back. Okay? So there's something there.
Yeah.
But we did that, and what I did when Turk had to leave for about 6 months, I implemented or instituted student positions. Because the one thing I learned in marching band was the band director can't monitor everything. So we had rank sergeants, section leaders, and that made up the band council. Mm-hmm. So when I was taking the students to Jack the Rapper every year, the students will, when we're down there, say, Dre, because half of these guys, a couple was my classmates. I graduated in '88. And they said, Dre, and I was younger. I didn't care about Mr. DeVond. I still don't, as long as you respect me. The students say, Dre, how come we don't have that? I said, I'm working on it, y'all. I'm working on it because I see it gives you guys more responsibility, and peer pressure is the thing. If you and I are doing something and you're the general manager, student general manager, and I'm not doing what I need to do, you say, hey, Andre, you keep on doing that, we're going to bring you up, and the staff is going to take a vote. And the worst thing in the world, your peers looking at you, and you're walking around like this with your head down because you now just you're on the outside looking in. Something that could have been a great thing for you in your career and everything and all. So I implemented that. I don't know how long that lasted because Turk was the type that, he was always in charge. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell him that to his face, so he knows that. And that's nothing to say anything bad about him, but he always wanted to be in charge. And so I saw it as a learning experience for the students here. It took the pressure off him and I of fussing with these guys, staying up all night listening to the radio station in our sleep. We made one of them, the operations manager or whoever, listen to it. They'll report back to us the next day, and that's the way we worked it. So
what I really hear you speaking to is like the different kinds of like impact that come out of the leadership here, whether that's community as far as students go and like building up those leadership skills. Mm-hmm. And the collaborative skills that are so important in this business, but also you're talking about the wider community impact, the fact that this is the only station in town, it actually matters that we're on air, not only providing, music and entertainment and something to listen to, but also it's public radio, it's an information source. Can you talk a little bit about what any kind of public affairs programming and stuff like that? What did that look like in that time in the 80s?
There was a lady here named Faith Johnson. She was the assistant director here, and she was under Dr. Dansker. And so she cared about those things for the station. So did I. Because I thought we should have told more than the name of the song. Well, this is WCSU 88.9 on the campus of Central State University, and play the music, 3:01 on a Friday afternoon, and here is Cool in the Game. Here's David Sanborn. At 5:30 or 5:28, here's a 2-minute news brief. Or here's something that's going on the campus of Central State University. We did very little of that back then. And we were, they tried, but they never allowed us to put in the budget for getting a qualified news person in to do that and to be over the news department and public affairs. So the station for a long time just was a station that played music, and we did underwritings. And to me, like I said, I get very challenging, and like I said, I hate to be told no when like I said, it's something that we could do. And for me, within the guidelines of public radio, I thought that we could provide more to the community. I feel that way to this day. That the only black college radio station in the state of Ohio, in this area, and it used to be able to reach Cincinnati because I used to hear it at my front door in Cincinnati when I got in my car. So it was all those things in a nutshell that I think we could have provided.
Before I get into kind of the part 3 of this, I want to get a general sense of your timeline here. So you started working here as a staff member in 83?
No, I came to school here in 83.
In 83.
From 83 to 85, well, starting in 85, I started working in Robeson with JJ and Stefan. Well, Stefan came in later, so it was me and JJ and myself. And then I left there near the end of 86, and came here into the station. Mm-hmm. Now, I was doing things with the station in 85 because this was my home. This was where I took all my classes and everything. And I filmed a couple of things for the staff here, convocations. And so 86, I was presented with a job, the fall of 86.
And you're still a student?
And I was still a student, and I had a full-time job. And like I said, because I think of my integrity and everything, that the folks had no problem in giving me a job. And matter of fact, when certain persons tried to block my full-time status, Dr. Thomas said, let him work. He's probably working harder than some of these people who work here. And he knew that, So I ended up working here at the university officially in 1987.
Okay. And then what year do you graduate?
I graduated in 88.
Okay.
I stayed here to January 1993. I left out. Like I said, I shot football here too for all those years, and then I came back and shot football. So I have been a consultant for over 30 years for this university in different departments, doing relations, public relations, media, shooting, and my company, DeVond Media Network, I do a lot of, somewhat documentary type pieces, telling stories, but, my expertise is so broad, I would do the sound and production stuff for your conferences and all of that. So I did that for the university for all those years too.
So when you leave in 93, that's when you
I
start
left and went to
working
go Channel 7.
Channel 7. How does it feel when you get there, considering that most of your, I guess, technical professional experience had been at your alma mater? Yeah, tell me about, like, the very beginnings of that job.
It's a big adjustment because now you're working in the professional world. You got to be on time. Not that you wouldn't have time here at the university, but working for the university, you can have that like, hey, man, I'm going to get there and we can make this thing happen. And we sitting in the edit suite working on a video or, we're on the radio and it's like a good day, drinking a Coke and doing our thing. Well, when I started at the television station, only thing they had to tell me, we're going to do this is how we do this, and this. Well, I was already a good editor. I knew how to edit. So I stayed in editing for about a month so they can make sure I got it down. But my weak part of editing, I stayed in production editing too long. Because I'm like, yeah, man, we're going to get this done, Hey, DeVond, hurry up, babes, get this done. We go on in 1 minute, And so, we got a live shot. We got to get this back to the station. So in that aspect, I was slow some days. It was like I had a mental crunch, and I'm like, man, let me see. I like this shot here. Get it done, babes. Get out of here, So my news director, and that was a true statement I made. He said, you came in here, you didn't have to sit on the bench. When you came in here, you edited, you went out in the field, you did your thing, you learned the live truck, and I thought I was dang on good at setting up live shots, And he said, you did these things, and that's when he made the statement. He said, when you leave here and you go into work with the students at Wilberforce, if you can train them like you was trained, I want them. And I want the Central State student too. Now, I should have had him to write a letter to these freaking folks around here and say, this is a bad man. This man is good in what he does. You're making a big mistake if he's not training those students for the future fields or whatever, because no one could do it. Now, I can say that by cockiness, or I can tell you that that's the truth, and that's the truth, because all the folks they brought into these places could not touch my technical skills of setting up things, the basics. When we're doing convocations and things like over there, because now I'm doing the job that Stefan does over here, and I'm doing video and all that stuff. And when I'm setting that stuff up over there, the president, we had to do a screen in the gym, but I also set up I split the line and ran a monitor on the stage under the podium so the people on stage could see. And so the president, when he always complimented me, John Henderson, he said, when it was the brother named Shaw. No, he went to Shaw, but he was a millionaire, the lawyer. I cannot think of his name. He said, oh, we can't see it. And the president pointed down there at the podium and said, look down there, And he saw his video. And he said, man, that's innovative. It was hidden, but they never seen anything like that before. We were doing that stuff for years. So when you bring fresh things to a community of folks that I felt like I was in Groundhog's Day one day, because I was just setting up stuff and everybody was stopping me in the hall. Hey, Andre, that's a great, you put that big television in the faculty lounge? Oh, man, we can go back there and listen to the news and all that stuff between classes. And I got stopped about 5 times, I remember, one day. wow, you did this out here? Man, that is great. And I had to stay in my office, because I was getting so many compliments. And I treasure that. I pat myself on the back for that, because that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And when you can train and teach a student or a young person these things, as many of my students have come back to say, Mr. DeVond, I got a job because of you. Not because of the work. It's something I said in my interview, and the lady said, who told you that? And the young lady said, Mr. DeVond did. And she said, he taught me whatever. She said, I don't remember what I said, but I got that job because of what you've always preached to us in work study. I was like, wow. So someone asked, how'd you learn all that stuff? And I said, I guess I was blessed. I went into a church here in Xenia, and for 40-something years, I've been working on their sound system. When I got sick, that was the only time they had to call somebody in. And I wouldn't charge them at first. And they made me take money. But that's what I do. I do all those things. And I try to take a student, not too much now because I'm not really here full time, but I will start picking up students and saying, hey, you need to come out with me. You need to come work this job. Let me show you some ropes.
So obviously we're here kind of as the HBCU Radio Preservation Project with a mission to support Black college radio stations to preserve their histories, both like the physical materials of programming and the sounds of students' voices on air, right, but also through things like this, oral histories, and understanding the people and the players that were part of the development of these stations. Can you talk a little bit about why that kind of preservation is important, specifically when it comes to Black colleges and Black students?
I have a story about everything. And that came from Dr. Dansker, because he was a newspaper writer. So sitting in his class, he'll snap it. He was a Jewish guy. And he said, that reminds me of the time when I was in Cincinnati and I was covering the riots. Well, what you just asked remind me, and I was a little boy in Cincinnati, but we here at Central State, April 4th, 1974, was going through a tornado that wiped out 3/4 of the campus. I was in Cincinnati. I remember that day walking home, just entered my house, and the sky fell out, the sky. When this school was hit by the tornado, this school lost a lot of its history, written history. Video wasn't that in back then. But they lost a lot of their documents. I have pictures of the tornado, 8x10s that someone gave me. Henry Garcia, who was instrumental in the license of this station here back in the 60s, early 60s, gave me photos and gave me a videotape that he shot. And that videotape is in one of my file cabinets. And Channel 7 has it because I took him over there. And, and we made a copy for them because they used it for the anniversary. But Black folks, it seemed like that our history changed so much, and our history and our documentations and historical things get taken away from us so much. And doing pieces like this here, you have to capture the folks that are living. was instrumental in working with some folks who had passed on. But these folks, I didn't have the time to do it. But if they would have said, hey, Andre, we got you a grant, then I would work and done this. And I have a 6-part documentary in my head about the history of this area. 6-part. Goes back from the Indians, the settlers who came here and came up with Tawawa Springs. From there, the AME Church entering this area in around 1844, and then buying the land for Wilberforce University, which 9 years later, 11 years later, 1856, 12, ends up being a piece of Wilberforce University. Then 1887, here comes Central State. 1947, the schools split. All of these are videos that tells us history, all these parts. 1947, Central State, Wilberforce, the community. That's 3 videos right there. 1947 to 74, the tornado. 74 to the present. I let these people get away. I got some video of some folks talking. I let these folks get away that I knew. Friends. Because 18 years old, coming here at 18 years old, these folks were my second group of parents. Mentors. Love them. And they cared about this community, these 2 universities. They had a passion for the students that went here, making sure that we was taken care of when we were away from home. And those were the folks that Barbara Simons, who was a professor here, Melvin Johnson, Dean, Dr. Johnson was the Dean of Arts and Sciences. Danny Davis, band director, Willie Washington, still living in the community, and his wife, just good people. He worked here, he was a vice president, and he was in charge of the biology department, I think it was, to name a few. And Dr. Lee Spree, he just passed this year. He was in the education department. That's how I got into education. Him and Dr. Dansker pulled me in on the education side, and I was teaching a master's course. So these are folks in this community, and a gentleman that worked at the museum named Billingsley, and God forgive me for forgetting his name. And I can't leave out Deborah Stokes, because we were going to start working on June Billingsley. Deborah Stokes and myself was getting ready to start working on the history project of this area here. And we didn't get it off the ground. June got sick, and then she passed about 2016. And these folks, and Joe Lewis, Dr. Joe Lewis, who was a historian professor, and Amos Martin, taught me Black history. Because when I came up, we came up in an era that we felt we didn't have any black history. So sitting in their classes, and I'm sitting in the class in 1988 when Jesse Jackson announced that we are African Americans now. I still have some problems with that slogan or that title for black folks. I was in class for that. And it was Joe Lewis who taught that. I used to call him Martin and Lewis. That was, it was them who taught black history and was the history around here. Joe wanted to give me his archives. I didn't take them. It's important that we keep, in this day and age, under the administration that we're dealing with here in the United States, that HBCUs and groups like yours preserve these things, because black folks have a story to tell. And it's not whitewash. We've had a story to tell ever since the beginning of time. And more than half of our stories have been whitewashed by all religions, by all different walks of folks. We've been marginalized. We've been, kicked off the bus in life. And someone has to keep it going and continue telling the story. I hope that answers.
Absolutely, it does. And I'm thinking about how you talk about this political moment that we're in, and the way that our kind of dominant culture is valuing, or rather devaluing, both black history and culture, but also the media.
Yeah.
What words of advice, I guess, would you give to people like your students, early career black folks that are looking to get into this work, knowing that we're in a place where our media is being defunded, there's a changing relationship between the media and the public, and there's, attacks coming from our administration on all of our communities? What do you tell them about this?
I tell them, and 5 years now, I had a discussion in my class with my students, and I told them, always tell the facts. Get the sources from the folks where it comes out of their mouths. I do not care about your opinions. And news, and that's another problem, news is so opinionated now. And I can tell you who started that. The Buzz started that type of news. There was a station here on the CW that these folks, young folks, that they started, had a good newscast. I used to watch them every morning. But there was a segment where they put their own opinions in about what was going on around the United States and the world, and definitely in our political system. And I said to myself, when I used to watch them in the mornings, I lay in bed and I said, oh, this is terrible. This is not good. Because in news, we're there to tell the facts. Like Joe Friday and Dragnet used to say, the facts, ma'am, the facts. And you can't make up nothing. If it was this story that came out of the White House, you got it on tape. That's what came out of the mouth of whoever, the president, secretary, the press secretary, you write that. Do not put your opinion in that. And that's where news and stuff is unbalanced. So I tell my students, stick to the facts. Something else I used to tell them too. But stick to the facts and tell the story. Tell the story.
Can you reflect on the state of HBCU radio as a whole today?
I think with our students don't, and this, if I'm wrong about this, then I stand corrected. But I think our young people is not engaged in the major number one piece of news in our country right now, or the number one topic of the United States, and that's about democracy. And half of them don't know what a democracy is. Half of them don't know what we've been dealing with since 2015, when a certain person came down the elevator, or not, I'm sorry, a certain person came down the escalator in New York. That changed the shift in everything we began to start dealing with in this country. 10 years later, look where we are. There's too many folks that worrying about where their fans at. There's too many folks that's out here getting high. And I don't care if you do that, but just understand your surroundings. And they're not paying attention to what it is and what we're headed for in the future. Because from even when I was in school and the folks that was before me, that generation, there's been a total shift in the last 60 years of education. Those students that have come out of school who've been through the John Lewis's that was in the civil rights struggles, folks that came in after the X generation that, okay, you can finger pop and everything all you want, but there was a gentleman in my neighborhood when we walked to the store and I said, Mr. Bill, racism is over, 1982. And he did one of those Richard Pryor boys on me. He said, boy, racism's not over. They're writing laws on us. They're writing laws in the power of the pen. In the power of the pen. Look what is happening right now. Everything is a stroke, an executive order. The Supreme Court puts it in stone. And every law since 16 to 17, take a little break, and every law since 2025, January 2025, has been written against the minority. And it was no break because the Supreme Court was taking away women's rights and other rights of folks and was ready to change the democracy of the people in this country back then. Our young people have to stay in tune to that. And college students are the ones that should and can make the difference of understanding all those things and keeping a perspective that basically shape the world. But I just don't think that our kids don't care about that now. They'll go out and they'll vote for this person because that person told them a lie. And they're not looking deep into the background of that person. I've had those very discussions with students sitting in this building here. I left here, I had to go have a drink because I said, oh my God, they don't get it.
That being said, what keeps you going? What keeps you showing up every day with dedication towards your students, towards mentoring and training people, in addition to kind of the consulting and outside work that you do in the media space?
I'm crazy. I get into deep discussions with folks, and I've always said there's been two men that walked this earth, and they were affiliated with the word king. King Jesus and Martin Luther King. They might preach, but they was writing for our social values against the government. Jesus was protesting the Romans. Yeah, he threw out little Bible verses, as they want to say, but Jesus was fighting for the rights of the people. And the people didn't see what he was doing then. Like today, or 56 years ago, or whatever, Martin Luther King was doing the same thing. And both of them died for the rights of us. Not about sin. It was the rights of us, for people to have their rights against governments and things. But their work, I want to say in vain. It was in vain, maybe, because look what people are doing in religion still. Look what folks are doing just as people live in society. It's worse. It's worse in 1960 than it was in 1968. And 2 folks lost their lives for it. So you wonder why we don't have a leader. And black folks always had their Moseses. But sometimes it's just a defeated purpose. But you don't give up. Because if you can save that one starfish on the beach from getting fried when the sun come up, you made a difference. And if I can touch and save one of these students here and show them something, and, that they can go out here and make a difference or take care of their families, I made a difference. I don't always ask for the pat on the back. I like it. In Cincinnati, it was a carpet dealer. He said, I don't care about making money. I love to sell carpets. And I do care about making money. But my reward sometimes at the end of the day is who I can touch and help and teach something or someone to make a difference, that they can go and teach someone or expand their horizons. We don't do enough of that in the world because everybody's, I got mine, you get yours. I'm not threatened by that. When the guy was talking about, we're the lowest paid adjuncts here in the state at the university here, I said, well, for me to combat that, I have my own company. And I can go out here starting at $250, $500 to thousands. And I'm not exaggerating. I made those possibilities work for me and myself. And that's what we as mentors and leaders of universities and HBCUs, that is what we have to instill in our people, our students. We're losing that. Okay, Trump's going to cut all this stuff. So don't mess with my pockets because I'm out here doing my own thing. You don't want me to collect government needs and, and supplements. I'm doing my own thing. Leave me alone. We'll see how far that goes. So I just want to, if people say, well, you still at Central State and blah, 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 and they do this to you and they do that, it's not about them. It's not about the people. It's about the institution. Because people are going to be crazy. This institution has to survive. HBCUs have to survive. That mothership, the first HBCU across the street there, have to survive because then it becomes a sinking pit hole if one of these universities closes. Because that means I can go out and close the next university, the government. That's why I'm still here. That's it.
What would you consider to be your proudest accomplishment in life so far?
My proudest is raising my 3 sons. My oldest attended FAMU. My other 2 sons attended North Carolina A&T. Now, they could have went here, and they did go here. All of them did go here for summer school. So, as we say, once you went to Central State or you're an alum. So they are alums of the university. But I talk to my sons a lot, and one of my oldest sons said, yeah, man, we did a lot because we were running over at Central State with you and Mom, and then you were over at Wilberforce doing things over there, and you had us involved with that stuff over there. So they knew college life. If I got busy and they had to come, I had students that said, come on, little Dre, Aaron, or Eric, and I'll let them go with them, and they watched my kids while I had to go to a meeting or something like that. That was after hours. But, because I did a lot of stuff after hours. But we raising them. But then the second biggest accomplishment is the commitment, pride, and respect. That's CPR, I call it. That I have committed to these universities. I never gave up on them. They pissed me off. They can make me so doggone mad, but it's not about them. It's about, I walk in the band room right now, and I've been in there a couple times. The band director was a student here, and, he always had mad respect for me. And when I come in, because I'm a legend in the band, I hear something, I say, he said, Mr. DeVond, would you just say what you just said? And it makes you feel good. And so all the band directors have, over the years, respect my presence on the campus of coming in, checking on them. Now, you do your thing, but they respect that presence, and the students do too. There's a couple students that, Mr. DeVond, what was it like when you was here and marching in the band? I said, hard work. Y'all don't march like us. I'm sorry. You don't. But that's the thing that we have between us, and we laugh about it years later down the road, because college days swiftly pass, and we reflect on those college days and the things that some of us, and you commend the people that still work at a university who's making a difference. So that's my accomplishment. Those are my accomplishments.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So those are most of the things that I had to ask you today. Thank you so much for volunteering your time and your stories. But before I stop recording, I always like to ask, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think is important to share, either about you personally or about WCSU or about HBCU radio?
It's a lot that I have in this head about everything you just said. And the bad thing about you, I have to specify so I can get it out, because my footprint is in this building here. I studied architecture when I was in high school. So when the architects came in and we designed this building, I gave him, Turk and I think Dr. Dansker, when we laid out the bubbles of the rooms, there were some things that we could have done different. If I had to go back and do it again now, 30 years later, there's a lot of things I would change. But you learn. You learn from mistakes. You learn over the years how to just keep growing. And that's what I wish folks at HBCUs would maybe, and I heard these horror stories from my kids too, about certain things that was going on. I said, God, this must be the trend. And I just wish that when you go to a HBCU, I wish we could see more people in the classrooms that looks like you and I. When you go to a HBCU and you bring a kid in, that person selected at HBCU because he or she wants to feel what our culture is like. We have a culture. Believe it or not, people try to say we don't, but we do. And when I went to all these mixed schools when I was coming up, but when I came here, it was like when I stepped foot in Harlem for the first time. And I saw nothing but black folks walking the street doing their own thing. And I was like a little kid on the corner. And I was like, wow. These people going on about their business. And I'm standing in front of the Starbucks down there. You probably know where it is on the corner. And I was there, and I was like, I didn't know this was like this. I fell in love with Harlem. Now, if I had the money, I wish I could go and live in Harlem somewhere. I would buy me a brownstone and be right there, because I got a buddy that lives in one down there. But we have to bring these kids and these young folks to our HBCUs and bring that excitement about being black, that excitement about being someone that I am going to be I'm going to be someone to reckon with when I leave these walls. Because I've learned what I needed to learn. I'll go get my higher degrees and come out, and I'm the baddest person in the world. That confidence. And it starts at the undergrad at an HBCU. They say we have more doctors, black doctors from HBCUs, and this person here. We have to keep that. But we also have to keep that by making sure we got people that look like us. I'm not racist. I'm not. But I think the same way this group over here wants their people to be recognized and taught by, it should be the same for us with no complaints. And when a student can look at me and I'm going to pour out everything in my head during a class, and I'm tired at the end of that class because I've taught so much. And I don't know if I said this on the recording, and that student said, man, I learned so much in this one class that I've learned in all the years I've been here. It's a good feeling, but it's a sad feeling too. Because what in the hell have you been learning for 3 years? And that was my reaction when I was told that. If I knew and I was a dean or vice president and I had that going on in my classroom with that professor that has a lack of teaching our students, you're gone. These folks are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to school, and they come out without a job. Don't have the confidence to even apply and go out and work for someone because they feel that they didn't learn and they wasn't prepared when they left the college classroom or the walls of the university. And trust me, I have blessed out professors for that. You know, a professor told me, our students are doing this and our students are doing that. I said, lady, your students can't even go and cut the equipment on. Don't insult me like that. This is the other side of me, because I want what's right for people. I'm very political, but I have to. That's in the confine of different people who I meet and friends, and we talk about this. And some of the stuff needs to get out because it will wake up the rest of the people, the world, or whoever. But public radio has to be around to tell those stories because public radio, that's the place where we should have a voice to tell that, and people make their own opinions about it and take their own sides. But you can't do that if you're cutting CPB monies, if you're not training your students on how to be storytellers, if you cannot have a voice even to tell this or tell about our rights. You know, thank God for the PBS stations that told the stories on Eyes on the Prize. We have to get out of so much music at our HBCU college radio stations, and it's okay. I want that because like you said, that's my background. Started with music, but we also have a story to tell, and this is the place to tell it. At a black college public radio station or any public radio station.
Thank you, Mr.
Elvis has left the building.